In the myth of the Holy Grail, the knights enter the forest to search for the Holy Grail, where it looks darkest to that individual knight. And I'm going to go through this myth a little bit more throughout this video, but it's important to get that symbolism straight as we navigate this terrain as we go forward, because the Grail is essentially life. Now, there's a great book called He. If you've never read it before, very, very interesting, and talks about Parsifal and his story in searching for the Holy Grail. And he realizes down the line that to serve the Grail is to actually to serve the inner woman. And he cannot get the Grail by trying to seduce any type of woman. He has to be just completely direct and transparent, while also keeping his integrity and still being who he is. So he has to jump the hurdle of seduction without jumping the hurdle of seduction. It's kind of a paradox. And all these truths are going to be more paradoxical the more that we maneuver through life. The truth is paradoxical because it is timeless. And so it's going to seem paradoxical to those that are still burning off and burning away some of that ego to get to the point in which they've integrated a healthy ego to see the infinite source of being that can emanate from them. But this is something that I want to very much so clarify, is that as long as the mood is dominant, there is no Grail. The mood imprints its character on the objective world, and all objective vision of the true splendor of the world is lost. One literally sells one's birthright for a mess of illusion. So therefore, your mood and the way that you have an attitude towards things is going to inform the construct of how you want to be perceived and how you want to move forward. So if you are, this is why it takes balls to have entered the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of God within, because you need to be fully accepting yourself. And that's really terrifying. In fact, as Carl Jung said, that's the most terrifying thing that one can do, is to fully accept oneself, because it means that now you've gone and seen the darkness within you, but really that darkness was just absence of light. And you are kind of like, this river. And what happens to the river during different seasons, right? What happens to the river? Well, right now, where I'm at, there's a river just down the road up the canyon. And during the winter months, it gets frozen, right? It gets frozen. So the river is now just frozen water, essentially, because it's so cold. But what happens when it starts to warm up? Well, the water starts to maneuver, right? And where does the river go? Where does the water go to? Well, the water goes down and it flows down and it goes into the lakes, right? It goes into the lakes. And where does that water go after a while? Well, it evaporates, right? It evaporates into the clouds, and then the clouds have the rainfall. So what exactly is the water then? And what exactly is it? Because it means that the environment is shifting and shaping the form of the water, right? So are you the form of the water, or are you just the essence of the water flowing through different stages? Okay, that's the real question to ask here. And that's why it's so important to recognize why it takes balls to really maneuver through this life, because you have to recognize that you are not the form. Okay, you can harness the form to do certain things for you in the construct, but you are not the form. You are the formlessness inside the form. In the Hinduist perspective, there's a sense of divinity being the vessel and the divine source itself. And you are, as the vessel of the divine source, you are also the vessel of the in that divinity of being the vessel, you're also divine. And so once you recognize that when Jesus Christ said, I and the Father are one, I really don't think he's claiming to be God there. But I also think he's claiming to be God. And this is where many people can say, oh, I'm the Son of Man. And you might think that this is blasphemy or whatever, but look, I don't see anything wrong with that anymore. I don't see, because who else are you going to be? Like, who else are you? Who else are you? If you're not the Son of Man, who else are you? Now, this is another reason I wanted to bring this up, because I've been reading the Gospel of Thomas recently, and I've never really taken it seriously because I always found the Gnostic side of it to be too abstract or too symbolic forms of philosophy to even integrate. And then I started to think about it, especially since developing the Regal Change old timers know this Regal timeline theory. I now started to see the entirety of my relationship to Christ as well as my relationship to the soul of existence, God, very much so different. And yet very much so not different at all. It's kind of funny. Even just last night, after I took a shower and such, I was I was just sitting there and I just looked around because it was just me and myself, right? It was just me and myself, and I was just, everything that I thought about my relationship to Jesus Christ was a lie. And yet it was not a lie at all. In fact, it was a fiction that had to be brought into the truth so that I could see the truth without the fiction. And so what I saw in that moment was that this totality of life, the essence of existence, the soul of existence, that is just the experience itself, and it's who you are becoming in this spiritual domain. Like, yeah, the material things are going to come naturally because, of course, seek the kingdom of heaven and everything will be given unto you. That's the whole point, is that you're nothing and everything. You're nothing and everything, and it takes balls to realize this. It takes balls to see this. Now, going back to the Gospel of Thomas, this is where we're going to get into some interesting topics here. So in the Gospel of Thomas, and I have it pulled up, this is it's essentially like a series of teachings from Yeshua, from Jesus, and it just, has these excerpts, and it's very fascinating, but this is one excerpt from it. It says, Simon Peter said to him, Mary should leave us, for women are not worthy of the life. And Yeshua answered, this is how I will guide her, so that she becomes man. She too will become living, breathing breath like you men. And any woman who makes herself a man will inherit into the kingdom of God. Well, now that's kind of strange now, isn't it? Considering the Bible talks about women as being the weaker vessel. Well, what exactly does that mean? What exactly does that mean if woman has to become a man in order to have the life, to be enlightened? Well, what does that mean exactly? She has to become a man? She's got to be what? She's got to be one of the letter people now? No. That's not what it means. That's not what it means. But this is one of the reasons why I think that the letter people have, and the alphabet people rather, whatever you want to call them. I just don't want to give the actual names here on YouTube or X necessarily, but one thing that you're going to recognize is that I think that the reason, it's not even that I think, it's just I intuitively feel as though I know this. I can't explain it why, but this is what it looks like to me, considering the pattern recognition that I have and the pattern conversion signals that I see, is that they're trying to, the alphabet people are trying to get at something inward, but they're trying to change the inward by changing the outward. And that's never going to work. It's never going to work. You can only change that which is inside you. You cannot change it externally. It all has to start. Now, there's a lot of spiritual practitioners that would say, well, everything starts with the body. And that's true to a degree, yes. But where does the thought, like where does the action itself stem from? Does it stem from the body, or does it stem from the mind and the soul? I mean, you could get into a metaphysical argument about that, but that's not what we're here to do. What I would say is that, let's say, because I was very fat at one point in time, right? I was almost 200 pounds at 5'6". I was very hefty. And at this point in my life, I could have kept just eating, right? I could have kept eating. Or I could have decided, which I did. I was like, look, because I was playing Fortnite and I was playing, I was playing Fortnite and I was eating pizza and ice cream. Really, that's, and I was playing Fortnite so heavily and so intently and so insatiably that I came super close to getting a win. And I was so invested in this. Like I really cared about winning this game because I was going, like I was on a streak, man. I was on a real streak. And so I was playing the game and I got second place. And I realized in that moment, after I got really upset and nearly like threw stuff everywhere, I was like, you know what? I can keep being a loser, literally being a loser, playing this game and eating pizza and ice cream, or I could start aiming to be a winner and start doing push-ups. So that's what I started to do. I started to aim to be a winner and started doing push-ups. But it took the decision. You know, was that my body or was that the mind? You know, in my experience, that was my mind and my soul trying to speak to me and take control of my body. Because if the body's controlling the mind, I never see that really happen in a proper circumstance where things are going for the best. Like a lot of addicts, for example, the reason that they're addicts is because the body's controlling the mind. But it's not what it looks like. The body's controlling the mind because the body's trying to find a way to calm down their nervous system from realizing what they're realizing, because that's their only way to cope, right? And I'm not speaking about that in negatively or degrading at all. I'm not speaking about this at all in a negative way. What I'm saying is that it's actually quite a faction of existence to see that, okay, well, I'm trying to calm down myself. Well, why am I trying to calm down myself? Why am I trying to use external things to calm down my inward self? That's an interesting question to ask yourself and to meditate on more so. But going back to this Gospel of Thomas, you know, why will women have to become a man? Well, because she has to integrate her animus. Now, for those that are familiar with Jungian psychology, the animus is the totality of masculine experiences inside a female psyche. The anima is the totality of feminine experiences inside a male psyche. And so, again, this goes back to this book as well, is that the grail is to serve the inner woman. Okay, well, what does a woman have to do if she has to become a man? She has to learn how to serve herself as if she were a man. Now, what would that look like? Well, that means that she has to realize that opening her legs to anything and everything is not going to be conducive toward a proper mode of being. Now, I'm not saying that she can't go have sexual experiences, that she should repress those sexual experiences, but what I'm saying is that she has to realize the boldness of what it means to have balls. Okay, that's how you have. This is exactly, we're going full roundabout here, wrapping everything up and putting a bow on it, baby. So she has to learn how to be authentic, but also learning how to harness and relate to that inner animus better. And that means that she's not going to have the need for outside validation or attention all the time, because there's two things that really need to be understood and understood by both man and woman about each other. A man's insatiable desire is to have status power, right? That's the male drive in our humanity. That's just the way that it is, right? There's no, until you can fully not identify with that, it's going to be there to some degree. And even then, like, it's just not going to have, you might feel it, but it's not going to have the same effect on you at all. And then on the flip side, women, it's their hypergamy, right? They want, their insatiable desire is to have the man that she can't have. So men want the power that they can't have, women want the man that they can't have, because that's the balance and the center of the psyche and the expression therein. Until the woman can learn how to serve herself as if she were a man. Now, I'm not saying that she should be like a physical man, right? She don't go get surgery being an alphabet person. Okay, don't do that. What I'm saying is that it's an internal thing. It's an internal understanding and understanding that takes place. Therefore, when you are searching for the grail or the life or enlightenment, whatever it is that you want to put a name on it, because there's essentially just a release of attachments that need to take place. And if you are, let's say, karmically deriving your sense of worth to certain things, let's say like money, because that's a really easy one for people to, or relationships, right? Relationships, you're not going to be able to inherit the kingdom of God until you basically burn through that hellish refinement process. Because I don't see hell as a place at all. I don't see how anybody, like all of these religionists, could possibly think that hell is a place for eternity. That is mind-blowing to me. Because if you look around, if you just look around at the love of existence, the light is everywhere. The light is really everywhere, and yet people want to believe that hell is this place forever. No, we are going through a refinement of hell. Alchemists knew this. The alchemists knew this. They knew, and they know that it's not about trying to actually turn lead into gold. It's the inward process. It's always been the inward process. Your soul basically starts out as lead, very heavy, connected to Saturn and Saturn's frequency. And then through time, after you go through that refinement, it turns into gold. And I've been pondering recently, the kingdom of God, like thinking about the archetypes of vampires, for example. And the archetypes of vampires have changed quite a bit over the last couple hundred years, but I think that I've got very good sources, ancient texts and ancient manuscripts that suggest that the archetype of the vampire has been around for thousands of years, but they looked very, very different. Basically, according to my research, and I cannot yet confirm this, but I have pretty good sources to see this Regal research. I'm just going to call it Regal research, and I'll be posting more about that in the Regal Academy. But what I've seen is that the Nephilim and the vampires, the archetypes therein, essentially, are pretty much the same thing. What does that mean, for example? I don't know. I don't know what that means, but that seems to be what the data is suggesting at this point. And that's why I'm not concluding anything on this. And I don't think anything when it comes to history is really final. Like, we can see the chronological order of things, but how sure are we of this history? I don't know. I mean, how do you verify certain things that if we don't even have verification tools to do them? I mean, that's something very difficult. And that leads another question. It's like, well, is the history even worth remembering then? Well, I would say so, but how do we get there? How do we understand that? Apart from, astral projection, which I don't astral project, but I do go to the mystical beyond, which I talk quite a bit about in my book. And the thing is that the mystical beyond is the light beyond this domain. And that's where what the Orthodox would call uncreated light comes from, I would say. I don't call it uncreated light because I don't think light is created. I think light just is. And I don't really have a reason for it other than it's just kind of obvious. It's just kind of obvious that light just is, and God and the soul of existence is just the reason for why it exists. The patterns within the light are the lights within us and without us and all around, and God is those things. Joseph Campbell had a very interesting perception one time. He's like, well, are the lights on or is the light on? Well, that's an interesting question as far as a metaphorical question goes, spiritually speaking. But this is why it takes balls, man. You have to be really willing to challenge everything that you think that you know, and then to get to a point in which you can just accept what you know and embody what you know and let go of everything that you can't. And it really becomes quite simple, right? It really becomes quite simple. It's not really as complicated as most people would like to think. And that's why you have to learn how to serve the inner woman. As a man, serving the inner woman is going to be what means the grail. And this is why, if you really want to be enlightened, you learn how to feed souls, and especially women. I mean, a lot of men they just want attention from women, and I get it, man. I totally get it. There's been many times in my life where I just felt invisible to women, and then there's been times in my life where I feel like no matter where I go, I can't get rid of them. And now I feel as though there's been a nice centered balance to me. And even though there's still that, the temptations, of course, will always naturally come and go, but they're not as in your face anymore. They're just like, oh yeah, yep, there's a temptation. Okay. And then you move on. Like there's just you go back to this stuff and just being, man. Like you just live. And that's really what it's all about. There is no point. And when I say that the kingdom of heaven, the truth about the kingdom of heaven is that there is no kingdom of heaven, except there is, right? That's the paradox, right? There is no kingdom of heaven, except there is a kingdom of heaven. Well, Thaddeus, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Like you're just speaking nonsense. No, it's actually just a paradox. It's actually very logical. It sounds like it's not, because you're trying to make sense of something from a linear place rather than a non-linear place. When you understand something from a non-linear place, then it all makes sense. But it takes not making sense for things to make sense. I found sanity in sanity. So, with all that being said, I hope that this message was useful and insightful for you. Stay blessed. Peace. Until next time.